So good morning. I'm Dr. Ryan R. Evangelista. I'm a pulmonologist and intensivist here at FA Normal Medical Center. For the topic for the midterms of obstructive lung diseases, one of the topic would be bronchiectasis. Now, what is bronchiectasis? Bronchiectasis is defined by the word itself. Bronchos and ectasia. Bronchos means the airways, ectasia means the dilatation. So bronchiectasis is the abnormal and permanent dilatation of the bronchi, which could either be focal, meaning involving a limited or a small region of the pulmonary parenchyma, or diffuse, involving airways in a more widespread distribution. Please take note that even though bronchiectasis is tackled under obstructive lung disease, please take note that the primary clinical manifestation of bronchiectasis are recurrent, chronic, or refractory infections. And this is the pathology. This is a cut section of a lung with bronchiectasis. As you can see, these are the dilated airways. These are the abnormally dilated airways. Abnormally dilated airways. Again, the pathology, the microscopic features of your bronchiectasis. Please take note of some of these microscopic features may give rise to some of the symptoms of these patients. For example, mucous gland hyperplasia would give rise to a symptom of purulent secretions, purulent sputum, your emphysema, which will give rise to COPD-like symptoms, increased vascularity of the bronchial walls associated with enlargement of the bronchial arteries, which may give rise to symptoms of hemoptysis. These are the different patterns of your bronchiectasis are described by Reid. Bronchiectasis could either be cylindrical, varicose, or saccular. However, regardless of the pattern of the bronchiectasis, symptoms would be the same. Now, what is the reason why patients develop bronchiectasis? At the center of the pathology or etiology of this bronchiectasis is inflammation. Inflammation which will give rise to the destruction of the structural components of the bronchial wall. Now, what causes the inflammation? The most common reason would be infection, particularly or bacterial organisms as Pseudomonas aeruginosa, H. influenzae produce pigments and proteases that injure the respiratory epithelium and impair mucociliary clearance. Thus, the host inflammatory response induce epithelial injury as a result from the mediators from neutrophil. Now, there is such a thing as vicious cycle in bronchiectasis. Okay, so there will be infection leading to inflammation, leading to destruction of the bronchial wall. Now, destruction of the bronchial wall would predispose this lung to infection. Then infection again would give rise to more inflammation and more destruction. Okay, that is termed as the vicious cycle theory of bronchiectasis by Cole. It is said that as protection against infection is compromised, the damaged airways becomes more susceptible to chronic colonization and infection, thus to inflammation. Thus, this is the vicious cycle theory. Now, there are a variety of causes of your bronchiectasis. As you can see, there are both infectious and non-infectious causes of your bronchiectasis. Here in the Philippines, the most common is your post-infectious condition, particularly your granulomatous infection, particularly your tuberculosis, your necrotizing pneumonias in adults. These are the possible infectious causes that could cause bronchiectasis, meaning once you get infection with these types of bacteria or organisms, you may develop bronchiectasis. Viruses usually rarely causes bronchiectasis, but among the viruses, the more common viruses that cause bronchiectasis are your adenovirus and the influenza virus. These Staph aureus, Klebsiella pneumoniae, and anaerobes are what you call your necrotizing organisms. They produce necrotizing pneumonia, thus predisposing these patients to develop bronchiectasis. HIV infection, why would HIV produce bronchiectasis? They produce bronchiectasis mainly because due to recurrent bacterial infection brought about by decreased immune system among patients with HIV. Then tuberculosis could either be due to a necrotizing effect on the lung parenchyma or a consequence of airway obstruction from bronchostenosis or extrinsic compression by the lymph node. These are the two reasons why patients develop bronchiectasis among patients with tuberculosis. And the other one would be your mycobacterium other than tuberculosis and your mycoplasma and necrotizing fungal infection, although this rarely occurs in real life. Now, very important among in the pathogenesis of bronchiectasis is an impaired immune defense, host defense, which are often involved in the predisposition to recurrent infection. Another possible cause would be endobronchial obstruction. Endobronchial obstruction is the major cause of localized impairment of host defenses. So it may be caused by endobronchial neoplasms, foreign body aspiration, impacted secretions, and bronchostenosis. Now, there are all, aside from localized impairment of host defenses, we have generalized impairment of the pulmonary defense mechanism. For example, you have your immunoglobulin deficiencies, your primary ciliary disorders, and your cystic fibrosis. These are the possible causes, your panhypogammaglobulinemia, in which there are certain selective immunoglobulin subclass are deficient, in which it may lead to recurrent airway, sinus, skin infections, and bronchiectasis. Primary ciliary dyskinesia is a disease entity in which there's a structural defect of the Dayin arms, radial spokes, and microtubules of your cilia, in which cilia becomes dyskinetic, their coordinated and propulsive action is diminished. Among patients with primary ciliary dyskinesia, they may have 5 to 10% may have bronchiectasis. What are the clinical effects? So patients may have recurrent respiratory tract infections, particularly sinusitis, otitis media, bronchiectasis. Males are generally infertile, and your Carter-Jenner syndrome. The other one would be cystic fibrosis. The problem in cystic fibrosis is secretions becomes tenacious. So it blocks the airways. So there will be impaired bacterial clearance due to tenacious secretion among patients with cystic fibrosis. Now, in cystic fibrosis, there's an increased risk to colonization and recurrent infection secondary to Pseudomonas aeruginosa, Staph aureus, H. influenzae, E. coli, and B. cepacia. Now, these are the non-infectious causes. So you just read on this. Now, what are the clinical manifestations? Bronchiectasis may present with a variety of symptoms. As I said earlier, the most common and the most important presenting symptom or clinical manifestation would be recurrent infection. Okay? So patients may present with persistent or recurrent cough and purulent sputum production. 50 to 70% of patients may may present with bronchiectasis. Patients may also develop underlying COPD. So patients may have dyspnea, wheezing, and I've said earlier, the most important would be the infection. So patients with bronchiectasis may develop an exacerbation, meaning there's an active infection. So how would you see it? So patients may have increased sputum production, there's increased purulence of the sputum becomes more bloody, and patients may develop fever. In these cases, you have to start antibiotic so as to prevent infection. Now, other physical examination of the chest and lungs are relatively non-specific. There could be crackles, rhonchi, wheezing. Now, the presence of clubbing in a patient with bronchiectasis is a red flag. The presence of clubbing in a patient with bronchiectasis may will make you suspect the possibility of bronchogenic carcinoma. Now, among patients with bronchiectasis who develop hypoxemia, chronic hypoxemia, they may develop findings consistent with cor pulmonale and right ventricular failure. Diagnostic imaging. Imaging studies can be done. So you have the initial diagnostic test would be your chest X-ray, which may present with non-specific findings, or you may have your Tram-Track sign. This is the Tram-Track sign. Although the best non-invasive and more sensitive than X-ray would be your HRCT, your high-resolution CT scan. Your high-resolution CT scan would be able to diagnose bronchiectasis. Number two, it could identify the severity, whether it's localized or focal or more of generalized. And aside from that, findings in HRCT may suggest a specific etiology. For example, if the bronchiectasis involves the proximal airways with upper lobe involvement, the problem could be allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis. Upper lobe bronchiectasis may be secondary to TB, while bronchiectasis with multiple small nodule, termed as nodular bronchiectasis, may be secondary to Mycobacterium avium complex. So this is an HRCT of your bronchiectasis. As you can see, these are your dilated airways. These are your dilated airways. Dilated airways in the arrows. Those are dilated airways. So the difference between these two pictures, picture A shows more of a localized bronchiectasis, while this picture B shows more of a generalized type of your bronchiectasis. Other testing, since patients may develop COPD, you have to do pulmonary function tests, and usually findings are similar to that of your COPD. Your sweat chloride test if you're entertaining the possibility of cystic fibrosis. Now, treatment. These are the major goals of therapy. You have to eliminate an unidentifiable underlying problem if it's present. Okay? Number two, you have to improve the clearance of your secretion because patients with bronchiectasis would have massive amount of secretion. Then you have to control infection, particularly during exacerbations, because this would further induce inflammation. And lastly, reversal or treatment of your airflow obstruction. For treatment of your secretion, you can do chest physiotherapy, postural drainage, you can give mucolytics. Number two, if a treatable cause is found, you have to treat that. For example, you have an IgG deficiency, you give IgG replacement. If you have tuberculosis, the cause, you give anti-TB drugs. If the cause is allergic bronchopulmonary aspergillosis, you give steroids. Now, antibiotics. Antibiotics are particularly given during an acute exacerbation. I've said earlier, an acute exacerbation is characterized by an increase in the amount of sputum. Number two, increase in the purulence of the sputum. The sputum now becomes more bloody and the presence of fever. In this case, you have to give empiric antibiotics. However, you still have to do a gram stain and culture because a culture-guided treatment would be better than empiric antibiotics. Now, there's a question about short or prolonged course of single or rotating antibiotics. The problem with, you can do this. However, the problem with this, especially these times, would be the possibility of resistance. But still, it could be offered. Particularly, you give your macrolides on rotation. Okay? Because macrolides, aside from being an antibiotic, it has an anti-inflammatory effect. Now, for treatment of airflow obstruction, you give bronchodilators. You treat this patient as in with COPD. Now, in those patients who are still disabled, despite maximal therapy, you have to offer already lung transplantation. Now, one of the common manifestation, I've said earlier, 50 to 70% of patients with bronchiectasis may develop may develop hemoptysis. So initially, you could give rest or antibiotics. Then, if there will be persistent hemoptysis, you could offer either surgery or bronchial artery embolization. So it would all depend. For example, if patients presents with hemoptysis and the bronchiectasis is only localized or focal, you may offer surgery. However, if the bronchiectasis is generalized, surgery is not an option, but more of bronchial artery embolization. Now, for those patients who develop hypoxemia, chronic hypoxemia or cor pulmonale, you have to give them long-term oxygen therapy. So that's all. Thank you.